Hello. So this video is an analysis of the any percent world record that I just achieved yesterday. So I'm going to be going through all of the levels in the game, going through all the strats that I perform, all the strategies that I use, and just the general thoughts between each of the things that I do in the run. So let's go. So the run starts when I move right on the world map, so first input. And we're going to be heading into 1-1 here. So obviously I'm going to be holding right and run, jumping. Okay, so it's worth noting that on these hills, you're going to want to stay on them as long as possible. And before you fall off of the hill, you want to jump and make sure you keep that speed. I want to keep jumping up the hill, running down the hill, and jump off that little light moving hill and keep the speed as long as possible by twirling. I'm going to keep doing some jumps. Right here you jump near the edge and you're going to want to curve here, do a turn back, and jump up here. I actually do the turn back after I land so that I get the triple, which I believe saves a couple of frames. So in this level we're going to want to grab a propeller suit. So I'm going to be grabbing a propeller chute by grabbing the checkpoint right here. So I grab the checkpoint. I'm going to be sliding down the slope and I want to jump as soon as I hit the Goomba in order to gain a bunch of speed from it. However, it's worth noting that this trick is actually sometimes impossible because it's less than a 1 frame jump. So it's not just a frame perfect, it's a frame perfect which sometimes just doesn't work no matter what you do. I miss it here. I'm pretty sure I didn't hit the right frame. Now most runners will want to grab this propeller block. This propeller block is optimal for high level runs. I mean low level. Any level runs which aren't at the top level. However, near the top level, we're going to instead be jumping off the edge here, turning back to land on the Koopa, but also try and hold right as soon as possible to gain speed while grabbing the Koopa. Jump off the Goomba, twirl, stay on that as short amount of time as possible, and then you kind of want to jump around here and throw the shell. I don't really have a setup for this. And then you're going to want to jump off the question block while the shell is hitting it. You don't actually press jump, you just kind of hold jump. And you're also going to want to do a slight turn back at some point, or stop holding one of the two. People have many different setups for this trick called DSS or dumb shell strat. But the strat I do is to throw the shell, do a slight turn back into the prop, and get it. So I got the propeller. I want to triple jump here to minimize the amount of time on the slope. I want to land on this slope as soon as possible to gain speed from it, and stay on it as long as possible and get a jump as far as possible. And then slide as much as possible. Slides are faster, so I want to slide as much as possible. Now it's worth noting that right here, I slide onto the slope slightly in order to gain speed from it. And slide down it, and I end with a 455, which is really solid. A 456 is possible with the Goomba boost that I mentioned earlier, and really good movement, but people don't get that very often in runs. So that's 1-1. Now, you'll notice that Mario hesitates here quite a lot, and it's because of the off-screen Goomba. So, the Goomba off-screen has a lot of different things it can do. It goes around a circle, a square of 4, and depending on what direction it moves, it sometimes has to turn to face that direction before it moves, and turn back because it's always facing forward. So going up is the slowest since it has to rotate 180 degrees, move up, and then rotate another 180 degrees to look back forward. This happens even off screen. And obviously left and right movements are a 90-degree turn, so they're a bit faster but still slow. The optimal pattern is for the Goomba to be in the top left position. The Goomba always moves clockwise on a new file, so if the Goomba is in the top left position, instead of actually every other position of the Goomba has to move up at some point. However, if the Goomba is in the top left, he never has to move up, so you gain time from it. The community has named that Goomba Fred. And Fred has greater impacts on other categories, but in any percent, it only loses up to a second. Sometimes even a bit less than that. But, so in 1-2, the first room's easy, you just slide, but I'm actually going to note real quick here that you want to start sliding when you reach the soft slope here, instead of sliding on this vertical slope, because it's a bit faster to start sliding later. So, heading into this room, I'm going to jump over the Goomba, slide. This is all pretty standard. We've already explained sliding and how it's faster in most cases. I'm just going to keep sliding down the slopes. All of this is really self-explanatory. So right here, I'm going to be tilting the Wii Remote slightly, just enough to make the minimum slope that you can make on these, and then slide down the minimum slope. It's actually fastest to slide down a minimum slope, not a maximum slope. So I'm going to crouch through there and ground pound in the brick blocks, and then slide over here, jump into the star block. A star makes you move faster. It's actually not faster to run down most of these slopes, so I try and dodge them as much as I can. I'm not really sure why, but it's faster to dodge them. I do the same thing with the hill there, trying to make it soft. I mess that one up a little bit more. I actually make a mistake here, which is pretty amusing, where I accidentally make it a flat slope while I'm sliding, which actually loses me enough speed to get a 455 instead of a 456, which is not a common mistake at all at lower levels. I mean, at top level. But I actually do make it here, which is pretty sad. I actually only have a World 1 and a 1-1 split because the Goomba varies and gives fake best times. So, right here I'm going to want to do a triple onto that question block. And the reason why I want to do the triple is because this guy can jump up or stay down, and this is the only way to consistently get past him. Well, not the only way. You can see he jumped. I would have died. You can actually jump off the very left of this brick block, but it's much easier and more consistent to just triple off the question block. So next I'm going to be running through some more slide down slopes as much as possible. 1-3 is one of the easiest levels in the game. Slide there just to gain a slight amount of speed. You don't need to do that unless you're at top level, because it only saves 1 or 2 frames, I think. I'm going to want to triple jump here to more quickly and jump over this and bonk less. It's worth noting that there's a strat where you don't bonk at all, but it only saves a couple of frames, and it's quite difficult for how little it saves, so people don't typically go for it. Slide down this as much as possible, so you want to jump off the very edge, right here, and then do delay before spinning. You want to kind of reach your peak Y velocity. That way you make it up here without having to land on this or anything like that. Lining up there in one motion is the fastest way to do it, and this was a very optimal 1-3. Wall jumping on this left wall is actually 1 frame faster if you do it optimally, but it's so difficult to do it optimally, it's just not worth doing for anyone. I'm gonna be skipping past the cutscenes, by the way. Right here, Toad comes and is rather frantic. You want to mash 2 and A during this to skip the prompts as quickly as possible. And then the Goomba comes out, steals Toad, nobody cares, we're just gonna blast off to World 5. In this loading screen, it's actually more unique than other loading screens, because you actually want to mash in this loading screen. And it actually loads faster. It's not actually faster for without loads, which is what this game is ranked in, but for with loads and times of 25 and above, it does save time. So we're up to World 5 now. In World 5, there's many difficult levels. This is where the game really starts to ramp up. Most of this is pretty self-explanatory for the beginning. Slide down the slopes. I double off of there intentionally so that I can triple off the Koopa, and you actually want to delay slightly, because if you ground pound too early, you'll get an ice flower. So instead I get a star by delaying, and if you wall slide slightly here, you'll actually lose, you'll actually gain enough speed to where you skip the star and just go straight through it, because it needs to fully spawn before you can obtain it. So I actually do a slight turn back there just because I recognize that happened. So you don't want to actually run down slopes that are more than 45 degrees or more in this game. It's just something to note. So on these vines, you want to be on them as short as possible, because being on them longer is just slower because you move less fast. And also, once you jump off of them, you're going to want to hold neutral on the D-pad. So basically what that means is that you don't hold any directional input, you just hold neutral. And when you're holding neutral, you keep the speed from the vine, which is actually 4 instead of the normal 3 that you have while running. So that's faster. So I do all the vines like this and try and jump as far as possible here. I didn't quite do it optimally, you can make it a bit farther, but it was okay. I want to run on this as long as possible and then crouch off the very edge to keep speed from it and land in the water later. Right here we're going to do water skip, so you want to jump out of the water pretty early, around there, and spin around there. What this will do is it'll allow you to bonk on the ceiling and start falling to dodge these two. Doing a slight turn back makes just much easier to do, and I would recommend everyone to do a slight turn back, even at high level, because it's just much more consistent. Right here you want to land as low as possible and jump off as early as possible so that you do not bonk on the pipe. Yeah, that's basically it. So I get in the pipe. 451 is actually not that good of an in-game time, only 452 there, but it was a very high 451. When exiting this pipe, there's many different techniques people use for the trick next. Some people mash, which is actually quite a beneficial technique, and actually most people use that technique because many find it to be easier. But I actually use timing. So once Mario exits, I press jump twice while holding left, and I jump and kick. And that saves a good amount of time over just running right. So here you want to grab onto the vine midway up, because you actually can keep speed longer without being on the vine as long as usual. So, and then you neutral off this vine, try and make it as far as possible without bonking on these, and you complete 5-1. There's a pretty long cutscene here, I'll just skip it. So, this is very minor, but if the piranha is on the top, you want to meet the piranha at the top, which doesn't normally, I don't know, it's pretty rare for it to happen. If the piranha is on the bottom, you want to meet it at the bottom. The reason why you want to meet the piranha instead of at the middle is that if you meet the piranha takes less time to do its animation where you run into it, and also but in the middle, it actually takes longer for it to face you and fight you. So if it's on the top or bottom, you want to meet it. If it's in the middle, just choose one and hope you meet it. If you don't, it's only like a handful of frames of time loss. It's just something to note. Now, it's worth noting, you always want to go down if it's in the middle, because going up is slower if you meet it than going down, because it faces down faster than it faces up. So always go down if you're uncertain. You have to meet this piranha because even though it is a strat to take an intentional death in 5-1 to open up the vines to 5-2, it's slower because you lose your propeller suit, and a 5-2 doesn't actually have a propeller, only 5-3 does. So I actually run until I walk down this. Walking down this is a fast way of getting the balloons efficiently. There's another strat where you jump and then spin and hold down at the same time to grab this balloon and run to the right slightly faster, but it's a bit risky for runs and most people don't do it. So grab the third balloon. You want to run on these light moving platforms as much as possible, and you also want to skid. How much you skid depends on feeling, honestly, but you definitely want to skid up for this balloon because it's faster to accelerate back to the right, or back to the left. And 93 is good. 94 is technically possible, but nobody goes for that in runs. 93 is good, and 92 is alright. So 5-3 is a faster stage than 5-2, because although you end with a worse in-game time because it's slightly longer in terms of length, 5-2 is an extra pipe, and the animation of the pipe takes so long that 5-3 ends up being faster. Even though we do remove the complete black screens for consistency between Wii's and the loads they have, it's still faster to do 5-3 because of the animation of entering the pipe and the fade in and fade out. In 5-3, I'm going to start by going left to around where I'm mostly covering this flower, and then go back to the right, so that I can jump off this brown ball optimally. I did slightly more than I needed to here, but I just wanted to play a bit safe. It's a strat here to bonk just a little bit, because this will actually make this brown ball here spawn later. Spawn just as early as usual, but you slow down just enough to where it's a consistent strat to jump off the brown ball. Like that. And you want to jump out. So there's this strat called donut jump coming up. You don't need to go for it if you're a lower level runner, but if you're within mid 24s to low 24s, it's definitely worth learning. So you want to, in my strat personally, there's a lot of different setups for this. I like to crouch jump off the very edge, pretty much, and do a full jump. And I land on it pretty consistently. And you want to do a middle jump to land on the right round ball. And that strat saves about an IGT or so, I believe. Maybe a little bit less. So here's another strat. Now keep in mind that you can see that Koopa dancing over there. So the reason why it's dancing is because I went for the other strat called Donut Jump earlier in the level. So the music is actually faster than it normally is, like earlier in the song. So the Koopa will dance. So this is very important, because if you're this fast, you can go for another strat called WSS, or Weird Shell Strat, where you jump. There's a couple setups for it. You can slide here slightly, and then do a small jump onto the Koopa, or you can do a big jump from over here. I personally find the big jump more consistent, since you can do a full jump, which eliminates factors. So you want to kind of start holding left to slow down as you reach the Koopa, and then grab it and start holding right, and then jump from around here to hit the brown ball. So the shell hitbox collides with the brown ball, and it causes the brown ball to die, which is faster than waiting for it to move. That strat saves a couple tenths of a second. It's worth noting it's possible to make this jump from the pipe to this brown ball barely. It's a really hard jump, but it's not actually faster, because this guy needs to move enough for you to jump, and he doesn't actually move enough if you jump off this guy, so you need to do the skid wall jump. Well, you don't need to, but the skid wall jump is a much more consistent way to slow down just enough for this guy to move, and you can jump off of him. I do a triple here to dodge this brown ball. People do different stuff. You want to do a fairly small jump there so that you go into the pipe earlier. I want to say that there's a pipe kick right here you can do. I personally find it really inconsistent, because you jump twice here, and then sometimes you just land in the poison, sometimes you miss jumping at all, and I just personally found it inconsistent. A lot of people go for this strat, but I personally just think it's too big of a run killer. It's honestly up to personal preference and how consistent you are with the trick. So next we're heading into 5- tower. So this is a good time to mention that this is a race. I was racing with about 5 or 6 other people, I think 5 other people, and I was playing fairly safe. However, I wasn't playing too safe. I didn't really worry about the race too much. I didn't really care if I won or not. So I was just going for all the strats I knew that I was going for in normal runs. So one of those strats is Aztec Cycle. You may have noticed the counters at the top of the screen. It says I hit Aztec Cycle 26 times and missed it 83 times. Aztec Cycle is a trick in 5 tower that allows for 559 or even 560 doors, versus the conventional 557, 556, 558, you know, that kind of stuff. Now, that strat is in this level, but it's pretty difficult to do. It's not that, like, insane to do, but the good thing about it is that once you learn it, it's very consistent to back up if you miss it. So that's why I went for it so much. You want to spin. I spun a bit late here. You ideally want to spin a bit earlier. And normally you're going to want to jump up here and then jump again, but I actually jump and bonk, so I completely mess up my setup. Aztec Cycle normally allows you to skip waiting here for this thing to move back, but since I messed it up, I had to just do the normal 5-5-7 strat, which is landing here as early as possible. Depending on how fast you get up here, you want to have to react to exactly how far the things have moved. So you want to hesitate a very specific amount before jump spinning. I actually landed here pretty late. It was not very optimal. And then you want to do 2 quick jumps. Make sure it's a full jump before you spin here, because otherwise this wall jump won't work. You'll be too low to get the wall jump. Wall jump, second wall jump, and spin really short after the wall jump. Most people actually go to this platform, but I went for this platform this time. I'm not really sure why. It doesn't actually lose or save time, it's just something interesting. You want to do a short jump spin. It's possible to short these spins, so I have to delay a very specific amount. Also, you can do a strat called instant land right here, where you down drill here, right on the edge, and you can land faster and jump faster than normal landing, but I didn't opt for it here. I ended up getting a 5-5-7 door, but there were a few small slip-ups, and overall, the execution of the tower was a bit slow. So, I'm going to be waiting here. I gain control right here. I have to wait a bit before I move, because if I had not waited, I wouldn't have landed on Iggy. Instead, I would have landed to the right and taken damage. There is a strat where you run to the right immediately, or after delaying for a couple frames, and then spin into Iggy, but it's way too inconsistent to ever be done in runs. It's just an IL strategy. Now I end with the 531 here, so Iggy spawns in the same positions, but you want to actually be on the right side of him after both hits, so that he spawns in these specific positions because it's faster. The reason why it's faster is that this platform moves up to meet him, kinda. He doesn't really do it here, but basically he just wakes up a slight bit faster if you go right. I get a 530 ending, which is actually pretty sloppy for high level standards. You want to be getting 531s without Aztec Cycle, or up to 533s with Aztec Cycle optimally in runs. So this was pretty slow and one of the biggest time losses in the run. Next we're going to be heading up into 5-4. It's worth noting I press 1 to cancel the save prompt, there's nothing really there. But 5-4 is known as a difficult level because of the skip that's involved in it. So, most people know a 5-4 skip by now. You skip the left by spinning on the platforms up top. I'm going to explain it in good detail here. So, you want to jump off the edge, spin near the poison, wall jump. The earlier you wall jump, the faster it is. Run off that, spin again, and then wall jump. I actually waited a bit longer before wall jump there, it was a bit sloppy. And then you want to down drill here. And you want to actually... I actually messed this up pretty badly, and this was about a second of time loss right here. So, you want to run off and spin a bit earlier than that. You should bonk slightly on this, and make it up to this platform. But, I spawned a bit late, and I didn't make it. So that lost about a second. And then I actually also messed that up a little bit, so... Ideally, you want to land as soon as possible after all these landings, but I actually land a lot later, as you can see, so I lost quite a bit of time there as well. After this, you want to jump. There's Koopas above there. If you don't go on the second mini Koopa platform, the Koopas will spawn too early, and it's going to be very hard to dodge jump. So I'd recommend either hitting the power block or going on the second mini Koopa platform. Obviously, the power block's slower. You want to spin here, so there's a good strat to note here that saves 2 seconds, one of the biggest strats that's not currently in the any % record. And it's called Bombful. A lot of people know about it. It's where you jump off this first bomb. What the actual strat I do here is just spin, do a slight turn back to avoid bonking on a second conveyor belt, which is off screen. Like, I bonk here, but I actually do a slight turn back to not bonk on conveyor belt that's off screen. But back to Bombful, you jump off the first bomb, do a spin, frame perfectly in the poison, and then hit the second bomb, It's a frame perfect spin, which is what makes it so difficult. And then you like jump off the second bomb, do a twirl, and hit this third bomb. It's really hard, but it has been done many times in runs, and people are going for it now to get world records, so we'll probably see that in runs soon. As you can see in my counters, I've hit it 2 times, missed it 10 times. It's pretty inconsistent overall, but it is it is one of the most likely improvements to the record besides Aztec Cycle and 5 Tower in general. Now this was one of the worst 5-4s I've gotten in a PB. The 5-4 was simply just very sloppy. I lost quite a bit of time. I got a 355 in my previous PB, and that was without bombful. It's just everything was pretty slow throughout. These numbers here are actually the amount of times I've gotten to each split since my last PB, and they're actually pretty low. Since I didn't actually do that much grinding for this record, I got pretty lucky to get it in the race. So by entering 5 Ghost House, I'm going to do a crouch jump and wiggle in order to to gain momentum to the right sooner by having a smaller hitbox. And then do a triple here to avoid slowing down on the staircase. A consistent strat here is to skid and fall down, but it's slightly faster to jump. However, it's more risky since you can easily start wall sliding on these things, which is much slower. Thankfully, I do pretty well here. It's actually faster to do a slight wall slide here to gain some more speed to the left, but I didn't get it here. Barely a time loss though, it's very small. The first room was alright, but not anything groundbreaking. You also want to enter I don't know if I mentioned this, but you want to enter the doors sort of to the left, but near the middle, so that Mario doesn't have to walk towards the middle of the door before entering. It's known as RTA door versus IL door. There are many different strats for there are many different setups for the strat that's coming up here called meme jump. I'm going to explain my personal one. What I do is I jump right as I like kind of reach right past this bar, do a full jump, and then a full double jump, and then a full triple jump. Well, not a full triple jump, but like a half triple jump. So full single, full double, full triple. I find it pretty consistent personally, but other people might have more success with other strats that involve more like jumping around here, doing a medium jump based on how you feel, and then a jump from there. That's what I used to do, but I felt like this was a good consistent strat. One more thing to note about this room. I found a strat pretty recently called like CAD corner crouch or something. We don't really have an official name for it, but basically what you do is you do a small turn back here, which makes it almost impossible to bonk and way more consistent to get up here. And then what you're going to want to do is do a smaller crouch jump than what I do here, and then start holding 2 in midair in order to actually go between the boo ring, which is actually a bit further since you've done the slight turn back. It's pretty consistent, but I don't know. I don't think it's quite consistent enough to go for versus meme jump, which is a couple frames faster anyway. It's honestly up to you which one you find more consistent. High level runners should try both, especially if they're struggling with getting meme jump. Second cannon in the game, you also forgot to mention you should mash on the piranhas loading screen as well, and also obviously on the 5 cannon loading screen. So now we're entering World 8. So this run is actually off to a pretty bad start, as you can see. My PB gets an 1158 in fact, of a World 5 exit, and I get a 12 flat .01. So the way this run ended up getting world record was through an insane World 8. It was very nice. Right at the start of every one, you want to jump and wall jump. That saves 0.1 to 0.2, but it's not that hard to do, and I would recommend people to do it. You want to run on these as much as possible and not slide on the slopes near the beginning, because the slopes near the beginning are slower. I'm not really sure why. But you want to run on them as long as possible, run on these as long as possible, and run on all of these as long as possible. Now I actually go for a strat here found by Yacker. So if you jump off one of the last pixels of this, but not the, if you jump off one of the last handful of pixels of this platform, you could do a full jump and land between the Buzzy Beetle and this block. If you land on the last pixel, if you jump off the last pixel, which is telegraphed by Mario going slightly down before jumping, you can actually recover by just not holding 2 during the jump, which is something that's good to keep in mind. So I land between them and slide. That saves an alright amount of time. It's not like anything great, but it's a good amount of time. So I went for it here. Now for shell grab, this was actually a bit slow. You want to be like turning back a little earlier, I think. But it wasn't, because you can see here I actually started walking pretty slowly. But it wasn't that bad. You want to spin pretty late so that you can throw the shell right as you like pass the geyser. And you also want to hold 2 during this shell boost in most cases. I actually didn't hold 2 here because I already knew I threw the shell late, so I didn't need to hold 2. But normally you want to hold 2 if you want to be optimal, because it kind of makes Mario hover up when he throws the shell. With some meteor patterns you can go up here and run down the slope slightly more, saving a couple frames, but the meteor patterns were pretty bad in this run, so I just knew I wouldn't be able to do it, so I just did this strat where you crouch under and jump off Buzzy Beetles. I do this strat to gain a bit of speed off that right-moving mushroom. I don't think anyone does this, and I'm a bit confused why, because it seems like it's faster to me. I don't know. I feel like people might adopt it over time. The rest of 8-1 is fairly simple. Just running through, sliding as much as you can, running down right-moving slopes. It's worth noting that sometimes people jump off the Buzzy Beetle, sometimes people don't. If you're going to be not, I recommend holding jump just in case you accidentally jump off the Buzzy Beetle, since it can lead to some deaths until you jump again. So right here is 8-1 triple. You want to jump pretty late here, twirl, and you want to land on this flat part. If you land on the slopes, you won't actually get a triple, so you won't be able to do a strat quickly. And then you want to double, twirl, triple, twirl. Now, one strat I should mention is that if you miss the triple, you can wait just a little bit here, let's turn back slightly and wait for this geyser to go down just a little bit, because it kind of cycles up and down. If you wait just a little bit for it to go down, you can just jump over it normally without the triple. So, although I don't do that, I still do it well. So, I still do the faster triple anyway. Like, I do that backup whenever I'm worried. So, you want to turn back as soon as possible here, because you actually want to enter the center of the pipe. You don't want to be entering the left or right, because Mario moves to the left or right, and that's much slower. It actually is much more significant than people give it credit for. I think a lot of people are just losing a ton of time here and don't even realize. I entered right in the center here, which was very nice. This was overall one of the best 8-1s I had gotten in a run. Run down the slopes there, and a high 433 is really solid for 8-1. 434 is doable. People have done it, I've done it, but for a run that's pretty good. A combination of splitting a tiny bit early, fast loads, and the fast pipe entry, as well as just decent movement throughout, actually gave me a gold split, which means it's the fastest I've completed the 8-1 segment. So now we're entering 8-2. You want to be running down these right slopes as much as possible. I already explained this in 1-1. You can also do a crouch boost here. I don't think it's any faster, but it's not slower. You want a full jump, jump off that to not have to lose speed. And then here you're just going to be sliding. So here's the first crouch boost. So in New Super Mario Bros. Wii, there's a couple ways to reset your momentum. One way is to shoot a projectile. Shooting an ice flower or a fire flower shot will actually reset your momentum back to running speed. If you're on a backward moving slope, that will make you slower than running speed, right? And another way is to crouch boost. We obviously don't have a projectile here, so crouch boosting will have to do. When you uncrouch, after crouching, it'll actually reset your speed back to 3. Also, while you're crouching, you won't slide on ice. You want to land here as soon as possible and jump as late as possible to milk as much speed from there as possible. On flat areas, crouch boosts are a lenient window, like you can jump multiple frames after you landed and crouched. But if you're on a slope, it's actually a frame perfect input to do a crouch boost. So you want to be timing them well, especially later ones. So you want to land here, jump as late as possible, twirl when you've reached peak Y velocity to not hit that. And there's a frame perfect crouch boost right there. You have a 1 frame input to jump and hold crouch. And I got it here. And this one saves a lot of time because you have significant time where you would otherwise be at lower speed, but here you're at 3 speed. You want to full jump off of this. It's worth doing a turn back there if you don't feel confident with doing that without a turn back. But it's fairly... it's just not that difficult to do it without a turn back. So we're going to be sliding some more here, slide here. Another frame perfect crouch boost right there. You don't want to slide down this, so there's such a steep slope. You want to start sliding once you reach the soft slope part, which is also the moving slope. So then you want to jump here, twirl at peak, do a slight turn back, and jump off this right moving thing to get a lot of speed. Now here's where strat varies again. Right here, there's a star, and the stars obviously make you run a lot faster, so you want to get the star. The normal strat for doing it is to crouch boost somewhere around here, onto this, here, ground pound, around here, jump, ground pound, and get speed from the slope with the ground pound. Now that strat is fine and all, but there is actually a faster strat which some top level runners are going for now. My personal strat for it is to crouch boost here, twirl, jump off this guy, and do a ground pound to hit the star block. You don't always need the ground pound, but it's useful to have. And then while you're waiting for it to fall, you get speed from here and hit the star in midair. It's actually faster to jump off this Goomba and potentially get a Goomba boost, like what I explained in 1-1, but it's harder to do, so I just decided to go for the safe strat here. One of the most overlooked crouch boosts is right here, and I actually miss it here, which was quite sloppy, but you're supposed to crouch boost right here. And it's a lenient window, but I actually landed early, so I end up missing it. Here you want to land as soon as possible, jump as late as possible, twirl in midair, and then try and turn back. I actually missed the turn back. So you want to get a wall slide here so that you quickly accelerate to the left, but I missed getting a wall slide, so I ended up being quite a bit slower. It's because I grabbed the star so late, like it had moved to the right. I actually have star for longer in this room, but even if, no matter which method you use, you'll have star for the important part. So you want to twirl and crouch boost here and crouch boost here. These are both lenient crouch boosts. They don't need to be frame perfect. I hit them both. You jump off the right, and here's where it differs. When you do the normal ground pound strat for star, you land on this power block, and you fall down just fine because your star's ended by then. But if you do reverse star grab or RSG, you will actually keep star for longer, so you have to land. And look at how close that is. I jumped on the last pixel, I believe. It's pretty difficult to actually land properly. Well, also, like if you land on the power block and fall, you just fall off. So you need to land past the power block, but it's difficult to time correctly, and I actually did it great there. As soon as you bonk on the ceiling, you want to do a twirl pretty quickly after that happens, and then do another twirl as soon as you can, and then get another lenient crouch boost onto there. It's faster to crouch into the pipe, but I actually missed the crouch. It's only faster by a handful of frames, I believe. Right here, you want to jump and then start holding 2 on the moving slopes in order to gain a couple of frames more speed on them. 427, even a mid 427 is doable in this level, but because of the turn back mostly, I ended up getting a high 426 instead. As you can see, I saved a lot of time in 8.1 and 8.2 over my personal best. I went from plus 1.1 to plus 0.1. In 8.7, you want to land here as soon as possible. This level may seem like just an auto-scroller, but there's a lot more to this level. I'm going to skip the parts where I'm just waiting though. So right here is near the end of the first coaster. So you're going to want to jump off the kind of edge of it. You can ideally jump slightly earlier. Twirl, jump, double jump, triple jump. This is called muffin triple. Muffin triple is basically just a faster way of doing the old strat of doing 2 wall jumps. And it's faster because you don't have to go so far left while doing the wall jumps. I actually grabbed mushroom at the beginning. Some people find muffin triple easier if you grab mushroom after doing the triple. It's honestly your choice. It doesn't save or lose time. I just prefer grabbing the mushroom at the beginning. You want to just run off that, and that's a good way to hit that 8.7 second coaster quickly. I'm going to skip the waiting on this coaster too. So right here, there's 2 strats. You can either ground pound right around here in order to jump off the edge of it and go into the pipe, or you can just not ground pound and just run to the right and run off it. Ground pounding, I think, is more consistent for me to gain a constant speed and to jump off the coaster quickly. You want to land next to the pipe so that you keep the coaster speed for as long as you can. But you want to land a couple frames before the pipe, because if you need to be landed for a couple of frames before you can enter a pipe, otherwise it just won't let you enter until slightly after. Here you're going to want to do another pipe kick. We already explained those. Do a small slide there. And I'm just going to skip the waiting on this coaster too. Right around here, you're going to want to start holding right and jump off the coaster from the front. Double wall jump. You want to make sure the first wall jump's fairly high so that you can actually reach the second one and make it up here. Small jump onto that. So I know I'm not explaining my exact visual cues, and it's because I don't really have any visual cues. It's mostly just a feeling thing. You can come up with your own visual cues if you want by just practicing the level. But mostly just a feel thing for me. This one I actually kind of have a visual cue for. I kind of start going right here, and I want to be able to jump right around here. Like right when this guy's head is slightly above the other guy, like they're both at similar heights. It's worth noting if you jump off the last pixel of either of them, then you will just lose all of your speed from the coaster and just like stay on the coaster, so you don't want to do that. Double twirl and a high 340, mid to high 340 is good for 8.7. 341 is technically possible, but very rare for people to get that in runs, if at all. That was a pretty early split. I'm not sure if that was actually a proper gold or not. I actually have it set to rainbow on this layout. So, I should probably explain the cutscene for loading 8-Airship. So, the level does the little unlock thing way shorter, like almost 2 seconds earlier, if you're playing on a 4:3 aspect ratio instead of 16:9. So that's why I'm playing in 4:3 right now. And yeah, that's basically it. That's why people play in 4:3 in this game. It was discovered when Skippy got the world record with 4:3 by accident, when it shouldn't have been a record, technically, in gameplay. You want to jump here. You want to spin this just enough. So, ideally, most players would want to spin it up to like here or something, because that's actually much safer and both the Mecha Koopas are allowed to fall down. But top level runners spin it a lot less. And what we do instead is crouch through it and crouch spam This is pretty difficult, and I wouldn't recommend it until you're a fairly high level runner. But the Mecha, you actually go under the Mecha Koopa, or the Mecha Koopa just dies depending on how much you spawn it. So, and you want to ground pound here. It's actually possible to ground pound a lot lower than this, but I was just playing slightly safe. Most people don't go for the ground pound closer to the thing because it's much harder and very risky. So, I should explain my triple jump method. So, I get a double off this cannonball and a triple here. If I didn't get the triple, and instead I'm about to get a triple, I do a crouch here, because the crouch actually will automatically make you do a double after the next jump. So you can actually recover if you don't get the proper doubles and triples by just doing a crouch here instead. I got the correct ones, so I double here and triple here. Tripling at around that location allows you to jump off the cannonballs, but if I jumped any farther to the right, I would have ran into the cannonball. I jumped pretty far right compared to what I usually do, and I just barely made it. This part doesn't actually matter that I spin here because I'm already waiting for this, and it's already on screen, so I can just spin. It doesn't really matter. I'm just waiting for this pipe. I'm just going to skip forward just once. In order to consistently make it in the pipe, I like just land around here and then start holding down. I actually lost a run to this once, which was really sad. So you want to jump pretty late and pretty low. Ideally you want to spin when you're off screen, or at least like basically off screen, because you can see there's time where I'm waiting for myself to land. But basically all I did here was just a bit safer movement than usual. And I just once again spin pretty low, and you want to crouch into all vertical pipes. I don't think I mentioned this, but all the vertical pipes in the game you want to crouch into, because you can see that the animation is a lot shorter versus if you jump into the pipe. Mario just has like a full jump into the pipe. So I just do that. So next is crouch jump. So I find it easier to go on the item blocks and crouch jump around there. That was actually a pretty early crouch jump. I normally crouch jump slightly later. As you can see, I actually crouched early, but I actually jumped late, which was the important part. If you jump off the very edge and do a medium crouch jump, you can make it here and jump cleanly. Most lower level runners just fall off and spin here, which I would recommend for those people. But if you're consistent, you can go for crouch jump here, which is a medium jump that saves a decent amount of time. This is just an easy crouch through there. You don't want to down drill here, you want to instead hover. It's just slightly faster, nothing else really to it. You want to crouch here late. You don't want to bonk on the ceiling because that'll actually make the next part harder. You want to spin. Oh, I never actually realized how close this was, but basically you want to spin pretty early so that you make it on the platform like this. If you don't make it, it's fine, because instead, let's say I spawn later, I could have just instead gone and wall jumped here and wall jumped here, which is what most people actually end up doing, but this strat is called wall kickless and it's faster. This airship was overall a pretty solid airship. You want to spin this about that much and then crouch through this so that you don't lose too much time by spinning it an extra amount. You want to jump off the edge and ground pound at the correct time in order to enter the pipe. A 413 is a solid pipe entry. So now bombless. Oh, bombless. There are many different setups for first hit and second hit. I'm not going to explain them all here. I'm probably going to make a tutorial on that later. There are already a couple tutorials out there. I'm just going to explain the setup I used here, but I would recommend trying to find your own setup, or at least for first hit, because my first hit setup is very different and I'm not sure if it would work for everyone. So I'm going to explain it anyway. So my first hit setup is basically You walk up until here or so, and you jump and spin early. You spin like here, and when you're sort of in the middle, like the third bar. And then the good thing about this setup compared to other people's setups, at least for me, was the fact that when I got up there, I did a very quick ground. I did a pretty quick ground pound, which I just found more consistent personally. Most people do a setup more like jumping around here, spinning later, like around here, and then ground pounding slightly later. But this is the personal setup I use for first hit. My second hit setup is basically as soon as Bowser Jr. is kind of up there, I do a jump. And I actually jumped at the perfect time, but I spun late. I feel like I got a slightly delayed spin right there, because obviously it's motion controls. Sometimes you can get delayed spins. But the good thing about this setup is that I can recover from that. Because I got a late spin, I went to the left earlier and did an instant ground pound instead of delaying the ground pound slightly. And it worked. Now this strat of getting instant first, instant second is known as coding double. And as soon as you get second hit, you want to ground pound late. If I ground pounded any earlier, I would have went to the fireball when I ground pounded, but I ground pounded late enough and get the instant third hit. At this point, I'm super stressed out. I'm like, oh, I can't believe I just got that in a race. Keep in mind, all of this is under the pressure of literally being in a race and being on this insane of a pace. I was stressing out like crazy. I'm gonna skip these cutscenes coming up. You just head off to Bowser's Castle. Obviously, that's not the ending there. Peach is there, but you don't rescue there. A Castle is one of the most difficult levels for newer players. Most of that beginning part is self-explanatory. So there's two strats here. You can either run a bit and then double triple, or you can crouch double triple. Personally, crouch is slightly more consistent for me, since there's a very small chance I'd bonk if I do the other strat, but it really doesn't matter. I use the not crouch strat all the time as well. You want to make sure you're tripling close to the edge. I triple very close to the edge here, because you want to be able to make it here. I make it pretty cleanly. You can triple jump a couple frames, like 1 or 2 frames earlier, I think it'd still make it. But sometimes if you jump off the last pixel, you don't get a triple, so you don't want that to happen. You can just run off of this and jump, that's pretty easy. There's a pretty common strat people use, where they wall slide on this part, and then it sets stuff up decently well. But I personally prefer the strat where I do a turn back there, crouch here, and that small turn back is not really needed. It can be a much smaller turn back. I find sometimes even no turn back if you do a bit more of a turn back on the first one, but instead I decide to do a turn back here just to play a little bit safer. Because I think I have the feeling I'm on smaller pace, but I know I have to play risky, so I play this Podoboo fairly risky. You're pace locked by this Podoboo, which by the way is why I took this part so slowly in comparison. You can see I'm kind of like taking my time, kind of slowly moving towards that, just enough to wait for the Podoboo. You can't actually pass it with current known real-time strats. There's a small chance you get a boost off these platforms by walking off or jumping on the last pixel, but it's actually luck based. So, and they hardly save any time at all. I don't believe I get any there. It doesn't really matter. You want to run off down under this as soon as possible. Obviously, this was not quite optimal, but it was pretty close. I actually spun a bit early here, and this was pretty bad for me. I knew I was only barely in record pace, so I really hoped I hit the fast strat of actually just going straight into the pipe, which is faster since you don't hover down as much. But instead I had to do a slight turn back into the pipe, which you can see by my face I was a bit annoyed about, because that means I wasn't even sure if it was record pace anymore. And since it recorded by literally 1 frame, I was quite... and I only realized that after the retime. I was like kind of felt like I might have lost the run to that, and there was a good chance I did. It was super lucky. So this one's not as good. Let's skip it. So by the end, judged by the 3 coins, you want to go into a pipe. I knew that I was on a pace which was scarily close to missing world record. So I decided to play this part really risky. And it ended up paying off since I did world record by 1 frame. I got nearly a perfect pipe entry there. But this was bad. This is basically what made me think I lost world record, was this. I messed up the store, and Mario walked a bit to the right before entering, instead of just entering straight through, which lost a good amount of time. It doesn't affect the in-game time, so it looks like my castle's fast, but it was actually a bit slower because of that. These fireballs are random, you can react to almost every pattern. There are like 1 or 2 of these second set, which you can't really do without losing at least a little bit of time, but this was a pretty easy pattern as well. Normally want to get an 88 entry here, but an 87 is pretty slow due to the mistakes I made in first room and stuff like that. You want to run a bit and then do a ground spin. Drill down as early as you can to hit the switch slightly earlier. Obviously it's a small time save. Obviously this is not real Peach. There's the plot twist where Kamek spawns Big Bowser. So kind of when Bowser's recoiling, you jump. And you want to do a full crouch jump, because if you do a full normal jump, Mario will be a lot, like, it will be a lot less good. Mario will just lose. I mean, Bowser's fireballs will just go too high. But if you do full crouch jumps, they'll be shot at a perfect height to where they'll all be able to properly work. There's a strat where you can actually use only 6 fireballs by going along the top route, but it hasn't been done in real time as of now. So I'm just going to aim all the fireballs like that. However, there's a chance here that a 1 in 4 chance that Bowser actually swipes instead of giving the good pattern of jumping. I don't get that. That loses like almost just over a second, so I was so happy I didn't get that. You want to head to the right as quickly as possible here, otherwise Bowser Jr. is almost guaranteed to swipe. But now that Bowser's here, he did the quick jump. I'll keep aiming the fireballs, and there you go. I aimed all the fireballs now, so it doesn't matter where the other ones go. You want to jump here as soon as possible. And something interesting is that if you aim the fireball too high, this Goomba right here could actually fall down and hit you sometimes, so you want to aim it slightly lower. Or just avoid the Goomba by going to the right earlier. Because even if you let the Goomba free, as long as you're going to the right quickly, you shouldn't hit it. So this part is just holding right and jumping at the right time. You want to run on this one as long as possible to gain speed from it. Jump here, not land there, and make sure you don't bonk there. There's a strat where you instant land here by pressing down in a small window and then wall jumping, but it's a bit too risky in my opinion for this late in the run. Down drill there. You want to actually spin a bit earlier here so that you land on this platform as soon as possible. You want to bonk slightly and land on this platform. It's completely fine if you land on this platform. You can also just wall jump, but the spin onto this platform is the fastest strat. I'm gaining some speed there. And then you want to run off this and do Tommy strat. I actually got a very slightly delayed spin put here, which ended up costing a little bit of time since I didn't land as cleanly onto this platform. But I hit the switch right here, so you want to hit the switch as far to the left as possible as well, obviously, and do as little of turnbacks here as possible. I had to do a bit of a bigger turnback for Tommy strat since I got the unoptimal spin, and I did a slight turnback here right at the end to make sure I hit the switch properly and didn't miss it. And I did hit it. And I didn't know it at the time, I thought I lost it, but I gotten world record by 1 frame. I couldn't honestly believe it. This was such a big accomplishment for me. But that's a story for another day, because this was the analysis of the Any% world record speedrun. Thank you for watching.